السلام عليك يا باب الله وديان الدين. السلام عليك يا خليفة الله وناصر الحق. السلام عليك يا حجة الله ودليل الهدى. السلام عليك يا تالي كتاب الله وترجمانه. السلام عليك في آناء ليلك وأطراف نهارك. السلام عليك يا بقية الله في أهله. السلام عليك يا ميثاق الله الذي خذه ووكله. السلام عليك يا بعد الله الذي ظله. السلام عليك أيها العلم المنصور والعلم المسموع والغار والرحمة الواسعة وعدل غير مكذوب. السلام عليك حين تقوم. السلام عليك حين تقوم. السلام عليك حين تقرأ وتبين. السلام عليك حين تصلي وتقوم. السلام عليك حين تركع وتسجد. السلام عليك حين تهلل وتكبر. السلام عليك حين تحمد وتستغفر. السلام عليك حين تصبح وتمسي. السلام عليك في الليل إذا يغشى والنهار إذا تجلى. السلام عليك أيها الإمام المأمون. السلام عليك أيها المقدم المأمون. السلام عليك بجوامع السلام. أشهدك يا مولاي أني أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله لا حبيب إلا هو وأهله. وأشهدك يا مولاي أن عليا أمير المؤمنين حجته والحسن حجته والحسين حجته وعلي بن الحسين حجته ومحمد بن علي حجته وجعفر بن محمد حجته وموسى بن جعفر حجته وعلي بن موسى حجته ومحمد بن علي حجته وعلي بن محمد حجته والحسن بن علي حجته وأن الموت حق وأن منكرا ونكيرا حق وأشهد أن النشر حق والبعث حق وأن الصراط حق والمرصاد حق والميزان حق والحشر حق والحساب حق والجنة والنار حق والوعد والوعيد بهما حق يا مولاي شقيا من خالفكم وسعدا من أطاعكم فاشهد على ما أشهدتك عليه وأنا ولي لك بريء من عدوك فالحق ما رضيتموه والباطل ما سخطتموه والمعروف ما أمرتم به والمنكر ما نهيتم عنه فنفسي مؤمنة بالله وحده لا شريك له وبرسوله وبأمير المؤمنين وبكم يا مولاي أولكم وآخركم ونصرتي معدة لكم ومودتي خالصة لكم
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Just a few announcements before we get started. First, we are having our annual poetry slam on the 9th of Muharram. It will be co-sponsored by Hadi Institute and the Light of Guidance. It will be held outside at 10:30 p.m. at Zanabia Center. If you'd like to sign up to recite, the link can be found on the eligible Detroit WhatsApp group. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any one of us. Secondly, we have a hygiene and cleansing product drive going on, partnered with Zaman International till the 9th of September. If you'd like to donate products, please reach out to Sister Amber Kazmi, or if you'd like to send money as your donation, you could also Venmo Sister Amber Kazmi. Alhamdulillah, Allah Jal is planning on having a lot of different types of events, and the quality and the quantity of events depends on what the community can also contribute to. So please consider donating to our organization. The donation box will be passed around by the brothers, by brother Qasim Kazmi, and on the sister side, it'll just be on the table right here. Also, you can also donate through Venmo at Eligible Detroit. Also, there's been some complaints on the brothers' side, especially that some people haven't been fully wearing their masks. It's been below their nose. So please, if you see somebody not wearing their mask all the way up to their nose, their mouth and nose, please make sure just let them know to cover up for the health and safety reasons. We also some brothers are holding a procession outside on Sunday. It's going to be a julus, basically because of one that Ashura project was doing got canceled. It's going to be here at 6 p.m. Inshallah, if you like to recite, you could reach out to myself or Brother Hassan or Akib Javed. Uh, Also, we also have um, shirts on sale courtesy of Hadi Institute. They're really limited in size. If I have we only have a couple, we don't have any medium sizes left. We only have five XLs, four smalls, six youth XLs, four youth mediums, one youth large, two youth smalls, and then 18 to 20, 18 months to 24 a month onesies. And they're also gonna be $15. So inshallah, if you like to buy one, please get in contact with any one of us as well. Inshallah, with that being said, I'd like to invite Sheikh Mehdi Rastani with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. Sisters, we move the partition. We're anticipating a lot of people tonight. So if we can fill in the space so there's still able to be some distancing, but also when the crowd fills in, they don't have to walk over or try to walk in front, Because last time we heard there was people going into the stairs. So we want to avoid that. If we can come as close as we can without being too close together, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
اللهم صل على Recite another salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين أما بعد فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن يعش عن ذكر الرحمن نقيض له شيطانا فهو له قرين وإنهم ليصدونهم عن السبيل ويحسبون أنهم مهتدون حتى إذا جاءنا قال يا ليت بيني وبينك بعد المشرقين فبئس القرين صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, please recite a second loud salawat. For the hastening in the return of our beloved 12th Imam, a third final loud salawat. The topic that we'll be discussing tonight, inshallah, is the topic of spiritual freedom and spiritual captivity. When you look at the movement of Imam al-Hussein, you find at different times he has different conversations with different individuals. And in these conversations that he's having, sometimes the conversation and the lines that you read are just normal lines that the Imam is conversing with someone. Sometimes, every now and then, there is a particular line, there's a particular theme, a particular concept that comes up over and over in the words of the Imam. There's a particular line, for example, that you can tell this line is more critical in this conversation. He's not just having a conversation with someone, he's actually introducing why he's setting out on this journey and why he's starting this movement to begin with. One of these lines is a line that I mentioned and I shared with you last night, the line that we've heard many times. وَإِنِّي لَمْ أَخْرُجْ أَشِرًا وَلَا بَطِرًا. I have not set out on this journey and I did not start this trip in order to create corruption and chaos and disorder. And the only reason why I am doing this is because I want to create reform in the ummah of my grandfather. وَأَسِيرَ بَسِيرَةِ جَدِّي. And I want to walk in the footsteps of my great-grandfather. وَأُرِيدُ أَنْ آمُرَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَأَنْهَى عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. And I want to make sure that I enjoin the good and I forbid the evil. Recite a salawat, please. Sorry, you can figure it out. Something we need to do? They can turn it off? Okay. Is it turning off though? That's all right, you guys are good, don't worry. Recite a salawat, please. If we need a moment, we can take a moment, it's okay. It's not a problem. Oh, it's pretty high though. Oh, they're to the chair. Okay. It's pretty tough though. Recite a salawat, please. There we go. Ahsantu. One more salawat, please. Every now and then in the conversations of the Imam, you will find these critical lines in which he is not just having a conversation with a human being, he's actually introducing why he set out on this journey to begin with. This line that I went through is one example of this idea. Then there are other themes, there are other lines, there are other concepts that constantly come up in the words of Imam al-Hussein on his way from Medina to Mecca and from Mecca all the way till the plains of Karbala. And one of those concepts that constantly is repeating itself, and it is a reoccurring theme, is the concept of freedom. And we'll have to talk about what freedom this is, because when we talk about freedom, of course we say, this is spiritual freedom and things of that nature. Many times we don't really understand what does it mean to be spiritually free. And that is what we will delve into tonight. Where did Imam al-Hussein speak about this concept of freedom? He spoke about this concept of freedom first, or at least once, on the 10th of Muharram. The narration says on the 10th of Muharram, on the day of Ashura, when Imam al-Hussein was in those final moments, and he heard that now the troops of Ubaidullah and the troops of Umar ibn Sa'd, they are attacking the tents. The narration says that he got up and he turned to them and he said, if you don't have any religion, وَيْحَكُمْ يَا شِيعَةَ آلَ أَبِي سُفْيَانَ, O followers of Ala Abi Sufyan, if you have no religion, you don't have any belief, فَكُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ, at least be free human beings, yes? Have a free spirit. فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ, in the way that you deal with one another. This is one moment where Imam Hussein speaks about this concept of freedom. Then again, you find the famous line that some of you guys might even have on your shirts, on the merchandise nowadays, in which he called out and he was introducing to people why he was doing what he was doing. He said, Ala wa inna da'i ibn da'i. He said, everyone pay attention. This man, referring to Yazid, he has placed us between two options. قَدْ رَكَزَ بَيْنَ اثْنَتَيْنِ. He has placed us between two options. بَيْنَ السِّلَّةِ وَالذِّلَّةِ. He has placed us either between humiliation or silla. Silla means when you take the sword out of its cover. In Arabic, They say salla sayfahu, means he took the sword out of its cover. He has placed us between two options, either humiliation or war. وَهَيْهَاتَ مِنَّا الذِّلَّةِ. And dhillah and humiliation is far from us. We've heard the last part of the phrase, yes, but this is the context in which the Imam is speaking. So the Imam says, no, we are not individuals to be humiliated. We are free individuals. But at the same time, when you look at what happened to Imam al-Hussein from a worldly perspective and a materialistic perspective, it didn't seem like he was very free. It didn't seem like his women and children were very free. No, they got massacred on one hand. On the other hand, his women and children were captivated. And this is what we get together and we mourn for our own reasons. So then what freedom is Imam al-Hussein talking about? Hayhata minna dhillah. Humiliation is far from us. We are free individuals. What freedom is he talking about? He's talking about the spiritual freedom. But like I said earlier, many of us have heard this idea of spiritual freedom. In reality, we don't really know what it means. We also don't know how we are able to attain this. And that's the whole point of his movement, and I want to walk in his footsteps. I have to understand this spiritual freedom. How am I supposed to be able to attain it? And that is why tonight, inshallah, we'll take some time to discuss the topic of spiritual freedom and the flip side, spiritual captivity. And we will do so by posing the following questions. Number one, what is spiritual freedom? And when you are spiritually free, what are you free of? When you're captivated by something, there's something that is captivating you. If you're spiritually free, what are you free from? That's question number two. That's question number one. Question number two, what are the different stages of losing one's spiritual freedom? And what are the different stages of developing one's spiritual freedom? Number three, what examples do we have in history of individuals, especially in the plains of Karbala, who were individuals who had lost their spiritual freedom? And because they didn't have spiritual freedom, in the critical moments on the 10th of Muharram, they ended up committing the greatest of sins and the greatest of massacres. And number four, and finally, which marja' was it? Which great alim was it who in the city of Najaf had his own class and had his own students and people used to come and benefit from him? But because he had enough spiritual freedom, when he found another scholar who was more knowledgeable than him, he took his students with him and he sat in the class of that scholar and made that scholar the leading scholar in the city of Najaf, a scholar that in the Hawza, you all will study his book if you go through the books of the Hawza. Which marja was this and what was his story? Tonight, inshallah, we'll delve into these four questions with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Yes, if we can recite a salawat and please move forward, inshallah. One more, please. You know, salawats are always in a package of three. One more salawat, please. What is the spiritual freedom and what are you free from? Whenever there is something that is trying to captivate you, or whenever you say, I am free, there means there was something that was trying to captivate you. There was something that was trying to limit you. There was something that was trying to confine you, and now you're outside of the confines of this thing. Then you sit there and you say, you know what, look at me, I am free. When someone leaves prison, for example, and they are free, it's very easy for us to point at the prison, say this person is free, meaning that he's not in the prison anymore. But when it comes to spiritual freedom, what am I free from? What's trying to captivate me anyways that I'm trying to get away from? In order to understand this better, we have to understand this concept of freedom. When we say I'm free, technically, generally speaking, what are we referring to? If you go to a person, say, are you a free person in your life? He says, yes, I'm a free person. What does that mean? That means whatever I desire, whatever I like to do, I'm able to do it. No one can stop me. If I decide to go to this place, no one can stop me. If I decide the opposite of it, if I come to a street, I want to turn right, I'll turn right. If I want to turn left, I'll turn left. If I want to eat a meal, I can have this type of food, I can have that type of food. I decide what's going to happen in my life. Whatever my desire is, I make it happen. And the key word there is desire. Because if you have no desire to act upon, then this freedom doesn't make any sense. Freedom is when you want something and then you act upon it. So when we talk about freedom, generally speaking, your desires and the things that you want and your wishes are the source of your freedom. This part is a bit technical, so it's going to need your attention. Your freedom, the source of it really is what? Your desires. You act upon those desires without anyone stopping you. You say, I am a free individual. When it comes to spiritual freedom, things start to change a little bit. Why? Because when you talk about spiritual freedom, you're actually trying to be free of these desires and these urges. So the concept that was supposed to be the source of your freedom before, now it becomes the source of your captivity. This is the difference. Normally, when I talk about being free, it means I have this desire, I act upon it. When it comes to being spiritually free, it means I have a desire and I have the power to not act upon it if I don't want to. It's a different scenario. Over there, your urges and desires are the source of your freedom. Over here, the urges and desires are the source of your captivity. And Islam has a very beautiful way of portraying this. This is how Islam will introduce this idea. You say, how can my desires become the source of my captivity? How can my desires, tie my hands down? I always thought if I want something, I do it. That means I'm a free person. This is what Islam will tell you about your desires. These desires that we have, initially it's just a desire. You act upon it the first time. You act upon it the second time. Okay, no problem. Any desire that you continue to act upon over and over again, it goes from being simply a desire, it starts to turn into what we would call a habit. So now I have a habit of doing this. Then if you continue down that road a little bit more, this habit starts to develop and it starts to develop and it starts to develop to a point where now it starts to turn into what we would call an addiction. Initially, it was just a desire. You did it so many times, now it's turned into a habit. You did it more times, it turns into what? It turns into an addiction. Initially, when you had this desire, if you wanted to do it, you would do it. If you didn't want to do it, you didn't really feel like it, you wouldn't do it. By the time this desire of yours turns into a habit, it turns into an addiction. When that desire presents itself, you feel like you have to do this. There's no saying no to it anymore. Sometimes deep down, you don't even want to do it. But because it's turned into an addiction for you or for me, I sit there and say, I don't want to do this, but I almost can't not do it. And a very good example of this is coffee. Coffee, when you start out initially, you say, well, coffee, yeah, I'm a bit tired. Let me have a cup of coffee. First time, second time, third time, it's just a desire. No harm, no foul. You just have a cup of coffee. Then after a while, you start to fulfill this desire more and more. What happens after a while? Now you kind of have to have it now. You it's a thing now. In the morning, right? Don't talk to me before I get my coffee, you'll see on the shirts, right? Then it turns into a habit. After a while, if this person just continues on this path, then his habit starts to turn into an addiction. This person, if he doesn't have his coffee, you can't even talk to him this whole day. He wakes up in the morning, if he doesn't have his coffee, and you can replace the coffee with chai as well. It just depends on the situation. He has a headache and he can't function and almost his whole life is falling apart. Why? Because this coffee started out as a desire, but he went at it so many times, it turned into a habit. This habit now started to turn into an addiction for him. It is so compelling at this point that if he doesn't do it, his life will fall apart. And from the Islamic perspective, every single desire that you have is like this. This is the important point for tonight's talk. Every desire, if you keep fulfilling it over and over and over again, in an overt manner, it starts to go from a desire to a habit to an addiction. So much so that after a while, if you decide not to do it anymore, you can't. Your hands are tied. And Islam says if there is a habit of this sort that turns into this addiction, you have now lost your spiritual freedom. You want to do things, You can't though, because you have this addiction. This addiction will stop you. Normally though, here's the problem that we have in this society and in this culture. Whenever we use the word addiction, everyone's mind goes to what? Oh, the habit of using a particular substance, yes, which is fundamentally haram in Islam. But everyone's mind goes to this. And in the language that we have, whenever you use the word addiction, this is what your mind goes to. This is the connotation of this word. Why? Because the English language doesn't have that Islamic culture built into it. Because of that, when you say addiction, they only think about certain habits turning into addictions. Yes, if you use a substance, they'll say, oh, this person is what? This person is addicted. He's dealing with an addiction. But Islam says every desire of yours can go from being a habit and turning into an addiction. Like what? What other desires do I have? You might have a desire to gather wealth around you. You like wealth, you like money. Okay, to a certain extent, fine. If you keep going at it and it turns into an addiction where you are willing to do anything and everything to get more money and more wealth around you, Islam will look at you and say, you are marid. You have an illness. You are addicted. But the language we have in today's culture and society, they say, no, this person is not addicted. This person is a very successful businessman. He's doing very well. There's nothing wrong with being a very successful businessman in Islam. Yes, talking about the one who's willing to do anything and everything. Yes, to get his way. This person, from the Islamic perspective, this person is addicted. He has serious issues. But no, in the culture and society we live in, you don't even have the terminology to refer to this person as a person who is sick and ill. What do they say? They say this person is very successful. Look, he's doing very well. He's willing to crush other people in business. He's willing to ruin lives. He's willing to go around their back and stab them in the back and do anything and everything to get more wealth into his hands. Islam says this person is sick. He's addicted. No, you and I say, no, this person is doing very well. MashaAllah. There are people who are addicted to fame and attention. This person is willing to do anything to get attention. Is it bad in Islam to be famous? No, you want to be famous, no problem, be famous. But what's bad is you're willing to do anything and everything. You're willing to post anything and everything. You're willing to say anything and everything just to get some attention coming your way. In this society, they say this person is famous. In the Islamic perspective, they say this person is sick and ill. He's got a problem. He has an addiction. But the moment I use the word addiction, where does our mind go again? The substance. But Islam says every habit can turn into an addiction. There are those, for example, who have terrible akhlaq. He can't even help himself at this point. Islam says this person has an addiction. This person is ill. He is sick. He needs to work on himself. And so on and so forth. Every single habit can turn into what? Can turn into an addiction of this type. So then you say, okay, so how am I supposed to be spiritually free then? If I want to make sure these desires don't turn into addictions, how am I supposed to be spiritually free? Well, here's the point, and it might sound a little bit like a contradiction, but this is the whole beauty of this discussion. And that is this, that if you want to be spiritually free, you have to limit yourself. Sounds like a contradiction. So I want to be free. He's saying you have to limit yourself. If you want to be spiritually free, you have to limit those desires. So where do I limit them? So Sheikh, you're saying I shouldn't drink coffee tomorrow. That's not what I'm saying. Islam has already told you where to draw the line with your habits. Wherever he draws a line, that line is what he calls haram. Haram. Where he calls it haram, he's saying, listen, you are obeying this desire of yours too much. If you go further, it will turn into an addiction for you. If you go further, it will get the best of you. If you go further, it will tie your hands. You're going to lose your spiritual freedom. Every habit of yours can turn into this. And so if I want to be spiritually free, I have to limit my desires. I have to limit my urges. I shouldn't be acting upon all of them. Say, which one should I be acting upon? This is why you have the religion of Islam. Whenever it's haram, that's where you have to stop. Before that is halal, okay, no problem. If God doesn't have a problem with it, then who am I to have a problem with it? Saying it's halal, okay, you can go ahead with it. The moment he says, oh, this part is haram, that means you're going too far. That's where you have to pull back. And this is the beauty of Islam. It will tell you exactly what you're supposed to do to be a spiritually free human being. Now, if I don't do this, what happens? Then I reach a point where these addictions will make me do stuff even though deep down I don't want to do them. And the first level of losing spiritual freedom is this. This person, he doesn't want to do something, but he feels like almost someone has tied his hands. They're forcing him to do something, even though there's no one around. He cannot go against his urges and desires. This person has lost first level of his spiritual freedom. He's addicted, no matter what you do. And I'll give you an example of someone who was there in the plains of Karbala on the 10th of Muharram, who had lost his spiritual freedom. And really, in many ways, was the reason why Karbala even happened. We'll talk about this person. This is the first level. Then if someone continues down this road more and more, not only does he end up doing haram, not only deep down he doesn't want to do it, but because he has this addiction, he ends up committing this haram. Then after a while, shaitan becomes buddies with him and starts to help him out on the way. And this is what the Quran says. That sometimes people who want to create corruption, chaos, problems, don't think about these people, oh, these are those people. No, sometimes in your context, my context, it might be, that backbiting I'm doing, the thing I'm saying about my relative, so on and so forth. Personalize this in your own life, yes? The Quran says sometimes people will follow on this road so much that shaitan will give them guidelines about what they can do to create more problems. He wants to mock someone. He wants to make fun of someone. Then all of a sudden, before he knows it, something in his ear says, you know what he's really sensitive about? This, say this. If you say this, he'll really break down. If you say this, she'll break down into tears. Say this. And he assumes that this is a thought that came to his mind. And the Quran says, no, the shaitan is inspiring him. The Quran says the shaitan is speaking to him. The Quran says, وَإِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ لَيُوحُونَ إِلَىٰ أَوْلِيَائِهِمْ. Shaitan does wahy to his friends and his buddies. This person didn't commit the haram anyways, but shaitan comes and tells him, says, do it this way. Do an even better job of it. And this is why you find in the verses of the Quran, one example of this, where the Prophet of Allah told the Muslimin that from now on, you cannot consume meat that is not slaughtered properly. It has to be meat that is slaughtered properly. And amongst those things that is not permissible for you to consume is the meat that is already dead. You have to slaughter it before it dies. If it dies by itself, you can't use that. Unless you're in a situation, the famous Sunday school question, what if I'm in the middle of the desert and there's nothing and there's no water and nothing, but there's a perfectly cooked dish of pork? What can I do then, Sheikh? It's like the famous question, right? And Islamic philosophers have been spending time to see how they can answer this question for centuries. It's a good question, no problem. Islam said this meat you cannot consume. It's not permissible for you to consume. And the Quran says that the shaitan came to the awliya of the kuffar, those special buddies that he has, and he started to tell them how to combat the words of the Prophet. He said, you know what you need to say? You need to go back to them and put it this way. And the history says this is what they came back to the Muslimin with. And you and I might laugh at this, but you have to understand this is at the beginning of the emergence of Islam. Yes? It's at the very advent of Islam. It's not, things aren't so settled as it is for us today. The Prophet said the meat has to be slaughtered properly. These guys came back. They said, let me ask you something. They were asking the mu'mineen. Let's ask you something. What if we consumed meat that, forget about God's name being mentioned when they slaughter it. What if it's meat that God himself has slaughtered? So what do you mean? Meat that God himself has slaughtered. What does that even mean? He said, yes, when these animals die, who kills them? God kills them. We're consuming meat that God himself has slaughtered. And this guy thinks, this is his own thought. And he came up with this. In reality, shaitan whispered this in his ear. He said, you're going to go against the Prophet anyways. But here, if you do it this way, it'll work even better. And here's the scary thing. When you and I decide to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're in that position, and you've already made that decision. Na'udhu billah, I've already made that decision. I say, you know what? I'm going to do this. whatever the haram is, and backbiting, lying, whatever the case might be. And then a thought comes to your mind, hey, if you do it this way, it'll be even better. That's shaitan. And you might have become buddies with him. That's the scary part. It might have been the case that you're becoming buddies with him, that he gives you such great ideas. This is the second level of losing one's spiritual freedom. Then if someone continues down this road more and more, you know what happens? There are shaitans that will live and breathe with this person. And we say shaitans that live and breathe with this person, our minds might automatically go towards, I don't know, this jinn comes and this kind of stuff. And I don't want your minds to go towards that. No, it's not that. This person, this shaitan is with this person 24/7. He is breathing with him. And he just whispers to him like he's his buddy. Before, shaitan used to come to him at certain times. Now shaitan is living with him. In Surah Fussilat, the verses I recited at the beginning speak about this idea. The Quran says, وَمَنْ يَعْشُ عَنْ ذِكْرِ الرَّحْمَنِ نُقَيِّذْ لَهُ شَيْطَانًا. The one who turns away from the path of truth, we will appoint for him a shaitan. And what's really interesting is that the verse says, نُقَيِّذ, we will appoint a shaitan for him. Normally, you wouldn't expect God to be the one saying what? This shaitan for this person. The verse says, نُقَيِّذْ لَهُ شَيْطَانًا. So what is this shaitan supposed to do? He lives with this person. He breathes with this person. He wakes up with this person. He goes to sleep with this person. Is this person frightened that there's some jinn with him? No, he's very comfortable actually. So life is wonderful. It looks great. Not every time that you do something horrible means like some jinn is going to show up. Not every time you do something good means you're going to see some angel in the middle of nowhere. No. But the Quran says this person, this shaitan spends time with him. وَإِنَّهُمْ لَيَصُدُّونَهُمْ عَنِ السَّبِيلِ 24/7, he's whispering in his ear. It's like they're best buddies now. And he doesn't even realize there's a shaitan with him until he shows up on the Day of Judgment. When he shows up on the Day of Judgment, then he sees the shaitan that's with him. He sees how ugly he is. And he says, number 39, he says, يَا لَيْتَ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَكَ بُعْدَ الْمَشْرِقِينَ. I wish you would get away from me. You were living with me this whole time? Yes, he was living with you. This is not for a person who does haram and he repents. No, this is for the one who continuously does haram and does not repent in the process. Otherwise, if someone repents in the process, he completely purifies himself. Yes? This is the one gives himself a green light continuously. If he continues, he will lose his spiritual freedom all the way to this third level. Who was an example of this? Who lost his spiritual freedom and played a key role on the 10th of Muharram? That was none but Umar ibn Sa'ad. What was the addiction of Umar ibn Sa'ad? Did he use drugs? No, that wasn't his addiction. His addiction was to power and authority. That was his addiction. And the question you and I have to think and ask ourselves is, what could be my addiction? Because you'll discuss and you'll see what Umar ibn Sa'ad's addiction got him to do. God forbid, my addiction, your addiction will get us to do bad things as well. Umar ibn Sa'ad, what was his story? Did he want to kill the son of Fatima from the very beginning? Is that who Umar ibn Sa'ad was? No, that's not how Umar ibn Sa'ad started out. Umar ibn Sa'ad at the beginning, he wanted to have nothing to do with Imam al-Hussein. So what was the problem then? How come he became the main commander in the plains of Karbala? I mean, that's a big change. You go from one point, I don't want to ever touch, Imam al-Hussein. I don't want to shed his blood or the blood of any of his loved ones until you get to the point where you are the one who throws the first arrow on the 10th of Muharram. That's a big change. So how did Umar ibn Sa'ad start out? It was easy. Umar ibn Sa'ad was dealing with Yazid. He was dealing with Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. And they gave him the promise that you are going to rule the city of Ray. You're going to become the governor of Ray. This was before Imam Hussein ever even got to the plains of Karbala. He was supposed to become the governor of the city of Ray. He was supposed to go there and retire and become, the governor of the city. And all he wanted was to be the governor. People respect you, the wealth is there. They come and pay taxes to you. I mean, it's a wonderful position, right? That's all he wanted. Then what happened? Then Yazid got word that yes, Hussein has started his movements. And Ubaydullah also got word of this. You know what Ubaydullah did? Ubaydullah said, you know what? Umar ibn Sa'd, if you don't go to the plains of Karbala and deal with Hussein for us, you will no longer be the governor of Ray. We're going to give that position and power to someone else. And now his hands are starting to shake. Because on one hand, this is the son of Fatima. They're saying you have to go deal with the son of Fatima. And what does that mean? We're going to discuss that momentarily. But I don't want to be the one who stands in front of the son of Fatima. I don't want to be the one who's going to go up against him. But then again, they say, I'm not going to have this position either. He had that addiction. It got the best of him. As much as he said no to Ubaidullah, Ubaidullah said, fine, no Ray for you. He gave in. Even when he gave in, he didn't say, I'm going to go to Karbala to kill Imam al-Hussein. No. He said, I'll go there. We'll figure out some sort of an agreement. He still didn't want to kill Imam al-Hussein. When did Umar ibn Sa'd come into Karbala? Beginning of Muharram. Second, third of Muharram, he came into Karbala. When did Ashura take place? 10th of Muharram. Have you ever asked yourself the question of what was happening from the 2nd and 3rd of Muharram all the way till when? The 10th of Muharram. If this was a battle that was supposed to happen in 5-6 hours in the morning, maybe until after Dhuhr, for example, say 10 hours in total, why didn't they do this on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th of Muharram? Somehow from the 2nd of Muharram all the way to the 10th, something is holding things up. I'll tell you who is holding things up. Umar ibn Sa'd was holding things up. He said, I don't want to kill the son of Fatima. I just want to be a governor. That's all I want. And Ubaidullah kept writing him letters. Until the point came, till the 9th of Muharram, he received a letter. The letter said, listen, if you won't get the job done, then Shimr ibn Dhil Jawshan, la'natullahi alayh, he's there in the army too. If you don't want to get the job done, let Shimr take care of it. But there's no governance of Ray for you. They just dangled this thing in front of him. And he had this addiction. So what happened? The Umar ibn Sa'd, who started out by saying, I don't want to even hurt the son of Fatima, became the one on the 10th of Muharram who took the first arrow and he shot it towards the tents of Imam al-Hussein. And he said, everyone bear witness, I was the one who shot the first arrow. And according to some narrations, he was the one who ordered that the body be trampled afterwards. That's where Umar ibn Sa'd started out. This is where he ended. Why? Because of an addiction he had. Because he had lost his spiritual freedom. Deep down, you might have even, argued, maybe deep down he didn't even want to do it. But at that point, it's too late. His addiction is he's going to get the best of him. This is what happens when you lose your spiritual freedom. Then there are those who know they maintain the spiritual freedom, they develop the spiritual freedom. Take a look at what happens on the other side. Recite salawat, please. There are those on the other side who maintain their spiritual freedom and then they develop it. And there's levels and layers to this as well. The first level of spiritual freedom, and I say the first level, I'm making it sound super easy. It's actually the most difficult. First level of spiritual freedom is that when your urges and desires show up and it's something haram, you don't do it. That probably takes a lifetime for most of us. Someone like me might never get there. But that's the first level. You have this desire, you have this urge to yell at your family. You have this desire to enter into, God forbid, haram relationship. You have this desire to have this type of a wedding where sinning is happening in it. You have all sorts of desires and urges that we have. If he can hold himself back, this person is maintaining his spiritual freedom. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. This is the first level. Then if someone actually does this and he continues on this path, consistently, not every now and then he does haram and he does tawbah. That's still good, he's doing tawbah. But the second level is you have to do it consistently. You live a life where you're not doing anything wrong. Then this person, not only does he have control over his actions, now he has control over his mind as well. That means that when he has an urge to think about something, when his mind is going somewhere, he can control his thoughts as well. Not only his outward actions, he can control where his mind goes as well. Shahid Mutahari talks about this in his books more. Then if someone actually does this a little bit further, then this person reaches a point where he has the freedom to control things around him in the world as well. Up until now, he could control his own actions. Then he reaches a point where he can control his thoughts even. Then he reaches a point where the things around him, natural phenomenon, he can also control. This is what the Ahlul Bayt did and had, and this is what some of our scholars also had. That this person, for example, he was walking in one masjid, then before you know it, for example, he closes his eyes, he moves on to another masjid in a different city altogether. And there's so many of these stories that you can't deny the general idea. This story or that story in particular, maybe you say, I'm not sure about this story or that story and things of that nature, but the general idea, we have so many of these mentioned from our earlier scholars all the way till the contemporary scholars or the later scholars, that there's no way of denying the idea that a person can reach this level where he can control the natural phenomena around him. These are the different levels of spiritual freedom. But it all starts from where? It all starts from him being able to say no when there's something haram in front of him. That's the most difficult. The rest is fun. The rest is a lot easier. It's that first step that becomes very difficult. This person. And this person who has spiritual freedom, when it comes to moments where he has to take critical decisions, his urges and desires cannot get the best of him. He'll make the right decision despite his urges and desires because he's been practicing this his whole life. And a very good example of this was a famous marja in the city of Najaf known as Ayatollah Kuh Kamarei, a Persian scholar or Iranian scholar at that time. Yes, this was at a time where Najaf was the center of, the Hausa and things of that nature. Qom was not as big at that time. So he's in Najaf, Ayatollah Kuh Kamarei. If you're a marja, it means people are willing to give their lives for you. It means people are willing to give their livelihood for you. It means people are willing to do anything for you. If you just say it. Ayatollah Kuh Kamarei is a marja himself. And of course, like many of the maraji have, happening in the story, that sheikh was Sheikh Al-Ansari. Remember his name. And his clothing even is a very modest clothing. And he says, well, I don't know who that is. So he moves on and says, whatever sheikh it is he's teaching in the masjid, I have my own. See, who is the sheikh even anyways? The Sheikh Al-Ansari, he wasn't well known. He used to go from different So he says, I went and sat in the I don't know if you've ever been like in a class, a lecture, whatever the case. Does that really make sense though? And then when he explained the is stuff I don't even will be placed in situations where you have to make critical. Very well, or God forbid, you might mess up very. The next day, his students came. When his students came, therefore, I am going to go and sit in his class and you're going to come. His class. So people came slowly. Then Sheikh but because he made the right move, every single because he made the right decision in the right moment. How was he able to do that? Because he had to make a critical call. Sometimes of you, even if you don't want to do that thing deep down, you'll end up doing it. Many of these can't control it. Why? Because when he we can dim the lights, we will take our hearts to the place. You find in this caravan, there are all sorts of individuals. This is a difficult one. The pain that a father goes through when he witnesses his son, for example, in the plains of Karbala is a difficult one. Then you have, for example, the brothers. Then you have the that they will experience during these sacrifice for Imam al-Hussein. Imagine the pain of this mother when this son did she go through when she heard that they could not find any armor these mothers, they're the likes of al-Baneen, who hears later on what happened to Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Only Allah knows what went through the heart of Baneen. Even though she was more interested in Hussein than anyone else, but you can tell that she was holding back her tears every time she would hear the name Abbas afterwards. This is the masa'ib of Baneen. Then you have mothers, you will find sons of late and so on and so forth. But the problem is gone to the battlefield on the 10th of Muharram. Son of Hussein himself has given his life already. They can tell the sadness and grief that's there in the voice of you for. And you saw your cousin as she prepares this sacrifice to be sent towards the battle. There's one obstacle that you have to take care of. But there will come a moment where there they embraced one another and they started to cry. Imagine this moment. give us permission to leave. And of course, Hussein said, no, I can't do that. How the name of his mother? What type of emotions went through his heart? Watching somewhere from some point of the tents, she must have been watching somehow, some way. She knows they won't, but maybe as a mother, she was hoping of Muharram. Then Aoun goes to the battlefield. He recites this I don't want Hussein to feel embarrassed in front of me. Let the other women bodies with the help of others all the way to the back of the tents. And you I would have loved to see you as grown men, but what can we do? Zainab, what will you do? Right now, you are in the presence of the body. You will have to spend time with these heads, and you will have to spend time with وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلب subhanahu wa ta'ala, that all of those who have worked hard for these majalis, for other محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. With live streaming with the Sheikh. Second announcement, we only have a few shirts until you're outside. We have requested many just a bit of head up.
Also,
Please, brothers and sisters, please. Salawat ala Muhammad wa also prevent anything that we don't want to happen here. We ask everyone, please make your way outside and then you can gather, inshallah. So please, anyone not purchasing a shirt, please, let's make our way outside, inshallah. Or if you want to attend the majlis downstairs, quietly attend the majlis downstairs. We just want to keep everybody safe, inshallah. Please, everyone, let's make our way downstairs and outside, and then we can have our conversations.